Welcome to another motocross action video. I'm Josh Mosiman and this is the story of my 2022 GASGAS 150 race bike that was built for the Wiseco World Two-Stroke Championships at Glen Helen. My friends have heard me say this multiple times. This race is my Anaheim 1 of the year. The location, the bikes, and the atmosphere are a perfect storm for me. The MXA Wrecking Crew, we have the keys to Glen Helen and we get to ride there weekly. We provide Glen Helen with lots of exposure and they give us free access to one of the biggest and roughest tracks in the world. It is also conveniently located between me, Jody, Trevor, Travis, Daryl, and the rest of the MXA test riders, so it's a pretty easy choice for when we're trying to meet and decide where we want to go to ride and test. I get to ride Glen Helen a lot, and my job as a test rider means that I get to ride two-strokes more often than most pros. So this gives me a leg up on the competition whenever the two-stroke national comes around. For the 2021 version of this race, I chose to use stock WP exact suspension on my KTM 150 and Husky 250 two-strokes, frankly just because I felt comfortable on the stock suspension and I didn't think I really needed it that much stiffer for Glen Helen. Ultimately, the race didn't go exactly as planned and the suspension was a little bit too soft for 2021. It wasn't the end of the world, but it definitely was going to be better for me to have suspension valved up for me. So for 2022, Pro Circuit's Luke Boyk tuned the suspension specifically for me in this race. We went with a stiffer shim setting in the mid valve of the forks, and he also replaced the stock low speed free bleed hole in the forks with a low speed valve stack to add more initial control to the WP air forks. Basically, the low speed stack he added gives the bike a little more hold up initially, so you're able to run a softer mid valve setting in the forks as well. So air fork revalve is actually fairly simple, which means that it's very affordable to get it done at Pro Circuit. It costs only $164 from Pro Circuit because there's only one damping leg that needs work. The air fork on the WP forks, it is left alone and they basically just tell you what PSI to run with their settings. As for the shock, Pro Circuit also has some mods for this to make it a little bit better. They have a reservoir and bladder conversion kit that removes the floating piston inside of the shock and replaces it with a rubber bladder that is also made by Pro Circuit to lower friction and to increase the nitrogen volume inside of the shock, creating a smoother and more consistent stroke. This upgrade retails for $265, and Luke also installed a stiffer spring rate and he revalved the shims inside of the shock setting, and that came out to $164. Talking about the rest of the chassis, I swapped out the forged aluminum stock GASGAS triple clamps for the Luxon MX Gen 2 triple clamps. Those retail for $879, and their bar mounts are a lot stronger than the stock bar mounts as well, which gives you a little extra durability when you tip it over in a corner. You're not worried about bending your bar mounts. The triple clamps come with a stock 22mm offset, and they're lighter than stock as well to save a little bit of weight on the front end. And the Luxon MX clamps, they're more precise in the corners than the GASGAS forged aluminum clamps, and they're also more comfortable over the bumps than the stock KTM machine clamps. For more handling benefits, I also use the FCP Racing engine mounts and front motor mount bolt. These retail for $399 for the whole kit. The engine mounts, they're the ligaments that connect the power plant to the chassis, and with mounts that offer additional flex, it actually helps you gain traction over the chatter bumps, and this is something I definitely noticed on the track. As for the engine, we use the same big bore kit, 150cc kit that I used last year at the 2021 race. We swapped it over into our 2022 race bike, and Pro Circuit's R&D technician Mike Tomlin, most famously known as Schneike, he freshened it up for this year's race. Once again, the dyno runs were strong on this bike, but Mitch Payton, he wanted to take it a step further. Last year I had stock suspension, stock triple clamps, and this awesome 150 motor. This year we got mod triple clamps from Luxon, we got FCP engine mounts, and we got stiffer suspension from Pro Circuit. So Mitch Payton said, hey, I'm gonna take it a step further this year as well. So he took the 38mm Mikuni carburetor off and bored it out to 39mm to flow more air and add more mid-range and over-rev power to this machine that was already 44 horsepower and extremely fast. Now with the mods that Pro Circuit made, the 44 horsepower 150 engine jumped up to 44.5. So not a whole lot more horsepower, but it does pump out an impressive 19.8 foot-pounds of torque, which actually makes an even bigger difference on the track than I expected. For only half a horsepower, I didn't expect to see crazy differences on the track, but man, it was very, very impressive. For reference, the stock GASGAS 125, it peaks out at 37.8 horsepower with 17.7 pound-feet of torque. A stock 150 factory cylinder kit that you can buy from KTM before Pro Circuit mods it, before anything else happens to the bike, that will produce 40.7 horsepower and 18.8 pound-feet of torque. So bumping it up to 44.5 and 19.8, it's significantly stronger with Pro Circuit mods. So anyone can buy the KTM 150 SX factory kit through a KTM dealer, and that retails for $831. Then Pro Circuit, they'll hop it up for $350, not including the carburetor mods, and they'll install it for you on your bike for $150. Then the Pro Circuit pipe, it retails for $278, and the R304 silencer from Pro Circuit retails for $155. When I first broke in the fresh top end that we added for 2022, I was blown away. It felt like it was too fast. With a 13:51 sprocket ratio, I was actually having a hard time shifting enough just to keep up with the rocket-like power. I weigh 175 pounds, so I am not a traditional 125 two-stroke rider, and I have never ridden corners in third gear on a 150 two-stroke. Most of the time, guys my weight on a 125 or a 150, they'll go down to first gear in the corners just to get a good pull coming out, but not on this bike. It was pulling third gears in turns and sixth gear down the long straightaways. To start out the test, we used straight VP MRX02 fuel, and on top of the bike needing to be shifted extremely fast, it was also detonating slightly as well. So our solution for both problems was to switch out to a 13:48 gear ratio on the sprockets. We went bigger on the main jet from 480 to 500, and we cut the MRX02 fuel 50/50 with VP's C12 blend to increase octane and create a blend of fuel that was just a little more forgiving for this bike. After these updates, we did not struggle with detonation, and it became easier to ride, but it still wasn't easy. This bike still wanted to be shifted constantly, and I ended up riding in third gear through many of the corners on the track, only shifting to second for the tightest spots on the track and never even thinking about going into first gear in the corners. As for the other mods I made to the GASGAS MC150, I added a complete seat from Guts Racing. So if you're like me and you don't like installing seat covers, you'll love this program for Guts. Basically, you pay a little extra and they'll give you a complete seat in the mail. It's got the gripper seat cover, it comes with foam from them, and it also comes with a seat base straight from Guts Racing. So I used the RJ wing seat cover, and it was in the color red, which looked really trick for the GASGAS. The RJ wing seat basically has 1 inch of foam on each side of the bike. It looks a little awkward if you're taking pictures of the bike or if you're just looking at it in the pits, but it helps big time when you're trying to grip onto the side with your legs, especially for taller riders like me. So I used the RJ wing seat. The cover, it retails for $150, and they get it installed with a complete seat and to have a bump installed as well, it brings it up to a hefty price of $379. I also used UFO Plastics vented airbox cover, and it comes with 2 side number plates. That retails for $62.99. Then I used a Works Connection Pro Launch starting device. That costs $129. And I ran Dunlop MX33 tires on the stock GASGAS wheels. Factory Effects dressed the bike up in stylish custom graphics, and those retail for $250. So what was it like to race this Pro Circuit built GASGAS MC150? It was a thrill. The extra half of a horsepower on the dyno felt like an extra 10% of power on the track. And to be honest, our novice and intermediate test riders actually preferred last year's Mod 150 over this year's bike with the exact same engine and with the bored out carburetor. The small increase in power turned into a lot more shifting on the track and quite a bit more work. As for the handling side of things, the stiffer Pro Circuit suspension, the Luxon triple clamps, and the FCP mounts, I could push harder down the hills with this setup and through the braking bumps, which meant that I had to worry less about finding the smoothest lines and more about twisting the throttle. After the bike was all done, tested, and ready to go, I was able to hole shot and win the first Pasha 125 Open Pro Moto at the Wiseco World 2-Stroke race, and man, it was a blast. Ultimately, I finished 3rd place in the second moto behind Justin Hoft and Ryan Surratt, and I ended up getting 2nd overall, but that moto win in the first race was so much fun and totally worth all of the effort that we put into this. It was a battle in race 2. I was right behind the leaders and ended up finishing 3rd for 2nd overall, so good times racing this GASGAS MC125 bored out into a MC150 2-stroke. Thanks to Pro Circuit for sponsoring and for helping out with this bike build so much. Thanks to GASGAS for giving us an awesome bike, and thanks to Motocross Action for letting me do some fun races like this one. If you guys like this video, be sure to check out the full in-depth article where we write out all the details about this bike on our website at motocrossactionmag.com. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date with our latest videos. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.